On the agenda is opening session. I'd like to welcome all of you to our regular monthly board meeting and appreciate you all being here. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. You all received the agenda, the minutes and the financials by electronic media. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
I second it.
Okay, got a motion by Steve, second by Ron. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Public comment. We have more public here than normal. Would anybody like to comment at this time? Hearing none, we will move to the update from the president. Lana?
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Excuse me. Prospect 319, Project Zodiac, so named by the Kansas Department of Commerce. We did submit an RFI for that, and the Department of Commerce rep who's managing that site consultant said that our project had been submitted and was well received. We've not heard anything further than that. Prospect 219 is a prospect that we've been working with. They have submitted an offer to purchase some property that we were able to find for them, pretty ideally located, and we've not heard back on that offer yet. I continue to work with the broker on that. Project 1018 one is assisting an existing company in Finney County with a new line of business. We have submitted some sites for them, and there's been some further discussion regarding this line of business for them, and we've not gotten any conclusive information on that one yet. Prospect 818-1, Project Birmingham. They did visit the community again in mid-April, and we had a very good discussion with them. We're able to talk about workforce and utility needs and site needs and housing needs, childcare needs, very good discussions, and we continue to work with them. You'll see in our meetings update that we've worked with them quite a bit over the past month to answer additional questions. Excuse me. Prospect 718 is an industrial company. We have submitted sites to them. They have visited some of those sites, and they will follow up with us. R&R is the Department of Commerce RFP. We've not heard anything further from them. Project Pinkies is working with Great Plains Development, Inc. over in Dodge City on securing an e-community loan as well as a couple of other loan programs they have available for them. We were trying to locate them in the downtown district, as you know. We ran into some complications with that in finding a location that would work, that would be readily transformable into a restaurant setting. They have found another site, and we've helped them to negotiate a lease on that, and we hope to be able to secure all of their financing and complete their lease agreement and get them up and going, hopefully still this summer. Project Rochester, those development incentives are working through the city commission process, and that is the First National Bank project between Target and Quick Shop on the Hill. 516.3 is our value-added agriculture program. I have continued to work with our ag producers on this project. We've started some discussion about the potential of incorporating hemp into this project as well. And one of the producers is from Haskell County. One of his facilities will actually be in Haskell County instead of Finney, and he has asked me to assist him with providing information to the Haskell County Commission related to tax abatement opportunities and how they may be able to accommodate him with that. So we'll continue to help him out and help Haskell County out with those as well. The transload project, we have submitted Garden City Industrial Park / transload sites to 2 new prospects. Both of them are considering that location, and Jim and Billy are working with them as far as securing the opportunities for rail and so forth as a part of that. On business assistance, we continue obviously to work with our businesses, especially our larger employers, on housing solutions and childcare solutions. Those are still their primary challenges. We've also had some good discussions on helping some of our local businesses with supply chain management and recognizing the opportunity that the transload presents when working through those. Again, we've had a very busy month. This again is just my schedule. This doesn't include the calendar of meetings that Nicole, Shannon, and Scott attend to, but it has been a very busy month, and I think Tom would attest to that because he's had to do a lot of work this month. Coming up in June, we do have Leadership Kansas coming next week, and I do a presentation to them the first evening they're here, and then also do a child care panel, which is a new addition to the Leadership Kansas program. And we were able to get one of our Kansas Health Foundation representative involved in that, as well as one of our major employers to be a part of that panel as well. So we're excited to present that to Leadership Kansas. And we've been working on an education workforce alignment initiative. Mr. Kreitzer serves on the Governor's Council for Education, and we've been able to put together a really good working group of folks, including the school districts, the community college, the Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Vision, really just trying to get those discussions going about how we better align our education systems, first of all, so we ensure that as they go through the pathways, there's a next step available at the community college. But even beyond that, ensuring that what we're training our youth for is actually going to be beneficial to them in the workforce here in Finney County and in the region. And I think, with the exception of, I did get the opportunity to present our child care proposal to the school board, 457 school board Monday evening, and it was very well received. They had excellent questions, and I really look forward to working with them as we move forward with the child care project. They're going to be a tremendous partner in that. So, any questions on any of that?
You might want to touch on your visit yesterday.
The Secretary of Commerce, David Toland, visited the community yesterday, and we were really pleased to have him here. His staff reached out last week and said they would be coming, so we planned a bus tour for them. Sam, Tom, and Bob were able to attend that, as well as Commissioner Drees, Commissioner Jones from the County Commission. Unfortunately, it fell during the City Commission meeting, so none of our city commissioners were able to go along, but Jennifer Cunningham was able to free up and be a part of that. So it was very well received. He was very impressed with a lot of the projects that we've done. We really tried to focus on the projects where we've incorporated either statewide or public incentives, those tools that help us to get projects done, including tax increment finance district, community improvement districts, rural housing incentive districts. So we wanted to show him how important those tools are to communities like ours, where projects maybe don't as readily happen as they do in Kansas City Metro or Wichita area. So I think it was very good. I think his feedback was very positive. They were really impressed, and they were very pleased, I think, that we had such a good group of leaders in that room to greet them and be a part of the community side of that presentation. So
Yeah, I think he was really impressed. I don't think he's ever been to Garden City before. And I think with everything he saw, he was very impressed. He was really impressed with the downtown area and how vibrant and how strong and clean and nice it looked. And he was very complimentary on that as we kind of drove through the downtown area, and I think he thought it was real nice. He was amazed, I think, at the progress of all the things that was happening, and I think he was a little more impressed when he asked, how all this was being done and how much the state had helped, and kind of when you told him, if they just stayed out of the way, that we'd get a lot of these things done, and he appreciated that. He understood that,
and I certainly don't mean that to sound as horrible as it sounds, but in our case, I think one of the things we've found
it has proved positive, and I think really good thing in this regard was the fact that, with some of the comments that he heard and he received, he's reached out and indicated that he wants to sit down one-on-one with you and probably by phone or whatever and have a chance to talk about some of these things that maybe they can clear up now and maybe get some real things working between
I
Commerce.
felt like he really did want, that he wants to align the services that Commerce provides, certainly with what the communities need. And I really appreciated his focus on rural communities and recognizing that the highway runs both ways, and
Yeah, that
was really
was a
nice.
refreshing comment.
It was nice to hear that from him.
He understood that highway runs both ways, and
Yeah.
the fact that his staff wanted to cancel this trip because they couldn't fly out, they had to drive, and it was so far, and he told them that definitely not, they were not gonna cancel.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Because of, the fact that they couldn't fly, that they were gonna drive, so.
And it was also really nice that we were able to get Sammy and Cecil and HJ involved out at the water park. They obviously really thought the water park was a great attraction, but getting to go over the sports of the world, the drawings as they stand today, and really hear their plans for it, I think that was really nice. He was really excited about that project.
Pretty proud and very complimentary on that part too, and kind of wanted to pat himself on the back a little bit in the fact that this was a project, Star Bond, that he approved.
Yeah, first one.
That he gave the final approval to this project, and how solid and everything financial and everything else was. So I think it was very good
Very
in
nice.
a way. So.
I do want to go over just a quick update on the budget. We did propose our budget to the county commission Monday morning. Had obviously a very good discussion with them, and very well received. But I did want to go through this. We have Holcomb tonight, and the city commission already has our budget. We will do a report to them, but the city of Garden City doesn't really have you come in and do a full-on presentation for every budget. So it's a little different with the city of Garden City. So I had prepared this really as just kind of an update. Those of you who were on the board in 2017, we did an update on the Fruth Plan, which for those of you who may not know, the Fruth Plan is the economic development plan for Finney County, Garden City. And it was adopted by the county commission and the city commissions and the other partners at that time, which was the Chamber of Commerce and Garden City Community College. City of Holcomb actually came into the corporation a little bit later. But this was the plan that was adopted. This is what they set out that they were going to do. So that plan called for the member entities to adopt the goals in the funding model in 2005, which they did. It then asked that they identify a source of funding for an industrial park in 2007. They did not. It said they would opt to purchase the industrial park in 2008. They didn't. The horizontal development would commence on the industrial park in 2009. That didn't happen either. By 2010, the startup program was to be fully operational, and it is. Obviously it was and is still operational. And then the long-term funding source was to be in place by 2010 as well. And at that time, the member entities had opted to pursue a sales tax for that long-term funding. So these were the goals that they set when they adopted that plan. Over the next 20 years, so by 2025, we will create approximately 3,700 new jobs. We created over 5,000 jobs by 2017. So we obviously were more than 8 years ahead of that goal in our job creation. Expand the existing industry program. We did employ an existing industry professional, and all primary industry type businesses would be identified and included in our visits. That does happen. Economic development startup program would be created, and obviously we do all of that, so that did happen. As far as they wanted an incubator, at that time that incubators were kind of the catchphrase, if you will, and they were really set to help entrepreneurs launch and help small businesses to get some free rent, that kind of thing, until they could get up and running. Since that time, the makerspace has really taken the place of the incubator for most economic development. A lot of times they're included in university settings. The makerspace that's been designed for Finney County is a standalone, but in partnership with the community college. So it would still offer a lot of those community enrichment type classes, that type of stuff, through the makerspace that the community college simply doesn't have the staffing or the time to offer right now. So a good opportunity to really help entrepreneurs launch and to help entrepreneurs work together to create products that they can then launch. The local business incentives program, obviously we have a tax abatement policy that was written by Finney County Economic Development Corporation, the job creation fund that was written by us, the deal closing fund, which is held by the county but a shared fund of the city of Garden City and Finney County, currently has about $1.5 million in it. For reference, for those of you who don't know, when the first TPNL project happened, they bought the only jointly owned piece of industrial property that the city and county had ever entered into, and those funds were deposited into that deal closing fund. So that was about 1.2 million, I believe, at that time that went in there. And then the county and city contribute to that fund each year as well. The E-Community Loan Fund, that's a program, as you all know, that we do through Network Kansas. It is administered by Great Plains Development, but we have sold 2 rounds of tax credits for funding on that and have sold all of the tax credits allotted to Finney County each time. And then workforce training dollars. While we've set some of those aside in our budget over the years, we don't have a long-term funding strategy for those. The 500 acres of approved industrial real estate never happened. Again, though, even without that, we were still able to do TPNL onto the only piece of ground that was owned by the county city. We did recruit DFA to develop the city-owned property when they purchased the Jamison ground. And then the expansion of the transload facility allowed us to also take care of the former Montfort plant site, which the city had purchased and done the remediation on. So even though they never actually bought that industrial park and did that, we still were able to accomplish those goals just through other methods. Long-term adequate funding, that was one of their big goals. In the beginning, it was designed that the city and county and our other partners would fund the cost, but the long-term funding source has never been secured for that. And I think it is important to note this key point. The key to most successful programs is having a dedicated or long-term source of funding for the programs. Since having to constantly raise money drains staff resources, programs which are not adequately funded typically fail. And it is important to note that this was written in a time when economic development agencies were really struggling to get things accomplished, especially in rural communities. And the fact that we've been able to overcome that, even though we haven't ever had the budgeting, is, I think, very impressive for this board and for this organization.
Yeah, and one of the comments that William Fruth put in this plan when he wrote it in 2005 was a forecast for communities like Garden City and in western Kansas, southwest Kansas particularly. His indicator was that regardless of what you do, the city of Garden City will fail and it will become a dust bowl.
Pretty much.
And I think if you look around 15 years later, that really has not happened. So
Fortunately.
I think we're probably going to be okay.
So I did again, they set the funding at that time. They set the funding for the life of the organization, actually. And so I just worked up a couple of graphs to show that. So they separated operations funding, so the actual economic development office, if you will, from the overall funding. It is also included in the overall funding, but they did it separately too. So for operations, based on what the member entities approved and adopted, the organization side has been underfunded by $2.17 million between 2011 and 2018. That doesn't count the rest of that period. And then the total has been just shy of 19 million short. So just wanted to go through that too. I think a lot of people don't remember how the organization came about. And we obviously have new elected officials on some of the commissions and so forth, but it's our job to remember where we came from and what our goals are. So even though, again, you know, we could just sit back and say, well, of course we can't get anything done, we don't have the funding, we've opted to continue to grow and meet the goals that were set for us. And funding, we assumed that funding would follow us at some point, that would be managed. So the county commission did ask for all of the funding alternatives that have been identified over the years and kind of a report out on each of those. So I did give them the sales tax information that we've drafted and researched over the years, along with communities who utilize that funding source and what kind of a pot of money that creates for those communities. Obviously the mill levy funding, which is what they do for us now, and how that works. So transient guest tax funding in the two communities, two large communities that would be similar to ours, Olathe and Lenexa, that utilize that, and public-private partnerships, and included the information on that. This board, as well as the funding partners, have explored that one pretty in depth back in 2010, 2011, and in the end kind of shied away from it as they felt like it really did create kind of a pay-to-play model, and there was a fear that the organization would become pretty beholden to some large private funding, and they didn't want to see that happen. So they have all of that information, and we'll see what they do with it, but they did ask that we present that to them again. So
And the contract services.
and the contract services to outside counties, yes, and we've shared all of that with them as well.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Any questions on any of that I can answer?
I think it's just important to note that back in that 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, those of us who had businesses saw a significant downturn. And so it greatly impacted, you know, what did happen. And I think we were very fortunate not to be in the development business at that time. And so our timing was very fortunate, and the investments that have been made, decisions have been very good ones, so.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Lana. Nicole, do you wanna talk to us about workforce?
Sure. Good morning.
Good morning.
As we talked last month, the student job fair was held on April 24th. That was the same day as our board meeting, so it was held that morning. Employer attendance was down somewhat from what it's been in the past, but however, the ones that did come were actively hiring students, and they had good interactions with the kids. So I think that was a positive. Because we did have some decrease in employer attendance, we were able to talk to them. If they had an online application process, we were able to generate QR codes for their websites, and we had them on little sheets of paper, and they were on just a table that the kids could come by and grab. They're really into QR codes at the high school, so they are able to just take the picture with their phone, and it takes them directly to the application site. And I think we had roughly 30 employers represented that way through the QR codes, and I believe we had to replenish the table 3 different times. So the kids were very much interested in that. I'm not sure what happened, if they actually went and applied for the jobs, but I think it was a good filler for the fact that we didn't actually have the in-person employers, and a lot of that was due to some of them just they can't afford the staff to go attend the job fairs. They are that short-staffed that they can't afford to send them to the job fairs. So that's another thing. We're gonna kind of revamp that student job fair. It's something we feel like we have to do. The kids request it every single year. So we've got the kids that are out there wanting the jobs. It is frustrating for them, I know. You've got the 14 and 15-year-olds that are just banging their head against the wall because they want a job, but labor laws pretty much prevent from hiring 14 and 15-year-olds. There's a couple employers out there, but they are frustrated. So we just kind of need to work through that. We're going to put together a survey and go after the employers and say, is there a time of year that works better for you? Is it an online process that you'd rather do? And then also get into why aren't you hiring the 14 and 15-year-olds? What could we do to maybe get those kids involved at an earlier age, because obviously that is a huge pool of applicants right there that we just ignore because at one time they were old enough and now they're not. And so it's just, it's tough for them to come to terms with the fact that they want a job and they really can't do what they want to do. So we're working through that on the youth development group. As far as workforce development goes, the formal partnership between us and the tech ed department was approved at the last trustee meeting. We very much hit the ground running on that. I spent most of the day yesterday out there going through some things with them. As always, we're continually evaluating their programs to make sure that they are offering what the community needs, but then we're also talking about ways that we can improve those programs and offer more. And Dr. Ruda has tons of ideas on additional programs. So we're helping on that. We're going to be conducting a lot of needs assessment surveys for them with employers and students to see what the interest is there in the programs that he sees a need for. But because of KBOR, the way they work, they have to see the numbers and they have to know that there is a need for this in your community. So that's where we come in with the surveys. It's exactly what we did with the early childhood education program. And we did have a meeting about that a couple weeks ago on the curriculum. About 10 years ago, they did have the program at the college. It kind of got put on the back burner because they saw a lot of decreased enrollment in it. They never actually got rid of it. It just was taken out of circulation. So we talked with Dean Terpstra, Dean Pfeiffer, and a lot of the other department heads on getting that curriculum back going. I think we can do a kind of a hybrid format. They're going to be able to offer a lot of the classes online as well. And then we'll also have an in-person portion of that, which obviously there's a lot of the practicums and stuff that have to be in person. So that was a very positive conversation. We are now going through, because that curriculum was 10 years old, it's changed. And so we're now going through that to make sure that it meets what we're going to offer, meets the criteria. We have determined that we're going to offer an Associate of Arts, an Associate of Science, and then also the certifications that go along with that. The reason for the Associate of Arts and the Associate of Science is because different four-year colleges, except some of them want the arts and some of them want the science if you're going into early childhood education. So we're going to be able to offer both. If they choose to go on to a four-year, they have that option. So that's been a really positive thing. Things are moving forward with that. Dean Terpstra thought that he thinks we can have this up and going by the spring 2020 semester. Yes, 2020. So that's moving forward nicely. Lana kind of wanted me to touch on the area relocation guide, which I did probably, I think it was finished earlier this year. This is something the Workforce Connection group worked on. It was, you guys can just kind of thumb through it. It was judged as a need in the community. We had a lot of employers coming to us saying, do you have anything that kind of helps showcase the community or something that tells these people that are brand new who to call for housing, or a list of realtors or a list of restaurants, or just a true resource guide for the community. At one time we did have something like that, but because of demand issues, funding issues, whatever, people leaving that did it, and that void really hasn't been filled. So we kind of took it up as a group, and the resource group did a lot of research on gathering a lot of data, and I put it together in that deal. It's kind of a living document. We have it available online on our website, so that, because we do have restaurants that change very rapidly, so we are able to go out and change that. It has a list of salons. It has, we just tried to make sure that there was every single service that is available in this community is represented in that document. We every so often go back through it and make sure that the information is still relevant. Like I said, it is available on our website in a digital format. However, if we have organizations that are wanting it printed, we have a agreement worked out with the print shop at the college that they can print us a high quality mass numbers of documents, so that the print quality isn't compromised, and they're really giving us a pretty good deal on that. So we do have that worked out. So if there's an organization that wants them, all I have to do is contact us and say, hey, we need da-da-da, this many copies. We've already had that happen with the school district in the fall, I believe, or for their fall semester. But in the summer, we'll be, I think, providing them between 50 and 100 documents that they will hand out to their new teachers. So just so you guys can have a look at that, that it is out there and the resources available, and the people that have used it, we've had really good feedback from. And if anyone ever says there's no place to eat, that's a lie, because we have 97 restaurants.
There's a bunch in here.
So do you guys have any questions?
I think just in watching them work with workforce development and our school districts, both of them, and I think in the meetings that we've had as a group, as we focus on how do we take care of all of these young people coming through and giving them an opportunity not only for a job, but for a career, and giving them motivation to stay here. And I will really compliment your new superintendent in Holcomb. He is bringing enthusiasm to that group, bringing a spirit of cooperation that wants to be inclusive, and it's just extraordinary. And so we're really looking forward to continue working. We've got another meeting here in a couple of weeks where we're really focusing on this pathways, as they talked about, and where these students can pick and choose early in their career. It says, I think I want to go here. And then we've challenged the chamber to work with their members to help the businesses outline what it is that they do and what do they expect, and then work with the teachers to help teach the teachers how this works and show them their workplace. I think it's going to be a really good deal to show all kinds of math examples, if you will. Take the kind of business that they want to look at in a pathway and make those math examples particular to that. It's really an opportunity. I think it's going to be extraordinary, but most importantly, it gathers all of we different entities within the city and starts getting them to work together, and wow, that's awesome. So I'm really pleased. Nicole, you guys are doing a great job.
I would have to echo Bob's comments, and I think an example kind of that, I don't remember whether Dr. Reuter or Chuck or whoever brought it up, but the differences in math, you know, there's math, and then there's welding math, and there's all kinds of different things, you know, and like I said, welding math, a lot of that might be just teaching them how to read a tape measure, you know, and what the little lines are, what the little marks are, in addition to that. So there's a lot of different scenarios that all of these things play into, and I think that just the enthusiasm of the group that has been in the 2 meetings that we've had so far, and the spirit of cooperation, and like Bob said, refreshing to see Holcomb School District getting this excited and this involved in it is really something. And Dr. Carlin and of course USD 457 has been amazing to work with, and their pathways and stuff at the high school are tremendous. So it's exciting to see these things develop, and hopefully this next meeting in a couple of weeks will expand this even further and get down to whereby, you know, hopefully time school starts next fall, there might be a little different thought process on some of these things. So
Well, and to piggyback on Lana's growth comment, it's just interesting as you work, especially with the college, because you do have the relationship between Dodge City Community College and Seward County. It's a really good barometer of, you go to these other communities and you get these reports from them, and Dodge City's cutting 2 or 3 tech programs, and Seward County is cutting a handful, and we're growing. We have our tech programs that are full, and we've got Dr. Ruta saying, and we need this, and we need this, and we need this, and you need to prove to me that we need it. So it's just, it's interesting to see how our communities are, all 3, changing as a whole, and so we really do have that growth factor, and it's refreshing for us to say we can go to our community and say this college is growing, we have a need for these, the kids are staying here, they're going to school here, especially when you have those other cases where, because the partnership is so strong between the three, we can hopefully go to them, because Dodge City's not gonna have automotive tech, we can go to them and say, okay, well, how many kids do we need to absorb? And so we're working through those things and hopefully gonna be able to provide that space that we can compensate for those programs that aren't gonna be available in those other two communities. So it's a good thing for us that we continue to have the growth and.
Good deal. Well done.
It's a great relationship, I think.
Hey, Bob, when you were with the educational deal, my son's a teacher now, and he's a new teacher, 4 years, but he was telling me that, like, he gave tests the other day. He gave him the whole study guide. They had to look up the whole study guide. He had several flunk the test because he says they're lazy. How do you get them? Have you talked about that?
You know, I think in a lot of ways, I'm going to try to use the positive side of lazy is probably not motivated that they see a direction that this test is going to benefit me. And I think that's the ideology that we're looking for is how do we take this person who is not interested ever in going to college?
Yeah.
Their whole thing is I've got to get through this high school because they said I had to. And we find a way that they get challenged into a curriculum that says this will teach me to get to this job. And we're going to look from that teacher in the business. We want that student to learn how to learn,
Yes.
not learn how to take a test. And so what we're really striving to do in these relationships is to bring these classes to life. You know, don't show me circle math up there on the board that I can never relate to. What the hell am I ever going to do with that?
Exactly.
You know, and yet, if we can bring those examples down to life by talking with our business community and bringing it down through the teachers that we can help them with practical examples. I like to use the word WIFM, what's in it for me? And that's what we have to do with that student. We have to find something that answers that question, what's in it for me? Why do I need to study this? Because when you do, it will take you here. And if we can get to that, Ron, we can win all these battles.
Yeah, he was always saying, you know, real life, you know, you're going to go out there and you're going to need a job.
Right.
And if you do not handle your work before you do that job, you're not going to stay in that job.
Well, or you're going to stay in that job.
Or,
You know,
yeah,
that's the other thing. That's as far as you're ever
You're
going to go.
never going to go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the other things that I think has been a really good side effect even of these discussions has been the focus on essential skills. So for a long time, they were called soft skills by industry and education alike. And when we had the first meeting, I said, please don't ever call them soft skills. That really discounts the importance of being on time and being prepared and being able to communicate with your team and with your supervisors and all of those things that, quite frankly, I think a lot of our generation has taken for granted. We've just assumed, well, every kid knows how to present themselves. Well, they don't. And it really is incumbent upon us to share that information with them if we expect them to develop those habits of success, really. So I think that's one of the other real positives that's come out of that. And the education folks in the room, the school districts and the community college said, they challenged us right back and they said, you go to the business community, you go find out what those success skills are that are important in their minds so that we can align what we teach in the classroom, because really success skills, you're gonna have to incorporate them into every class. It's gonna be a part of every teacher's duty, really, to ensure that those kids are bringing their A game, as the community college would say, So I think that's gonna be another great side effect of this programming, is really that creating those opportunities for our kids to get exposed to those things that are gonna matter going forward.
Because I think in a lot of ways, the teachers, you have to remember, they have spent their life in the academic world. They have taken tests, and that's how they've been measured. They've gone on to the next degree and the next degree. So in their whole life, those tests have been very important. And now we're asking them to come out of their comfort zone. And we can't just say, you have to do it differently. You have to share with them there is another way. and it's gonna be good for all of us if we can find that. So it's not just getting the students interested or the school district to change, business community to change, the teachers to change. We have to come around and find a way to make this thing happen. Just getting it started has been phenomenal.
Yes, it
And
has.
to have people walk away from, this is the way we've always done it, into saying, okay, what else do we have to do? Big, big step, and I think we're on our way. So, let's see what happens in our community, but I like where it started.
I think it's very positive where it started and what it looks like it's gonna come out of it, so good to keep up the positive momentum, and Nicole, keep doing what you do with
Yeah,
the
thank
college
you.
and all the rest of them, and we'll move forward from there. Any other questions or comments on Nicole's stuff? If not, we'll move forward. Scott, would you like to talk about social media?
Sure. This past month, we had about 5,000 visits to the website. There wasn't a high volume or high read story this time. They were all kind of spread out over everything, but the top posts this time were about a mental health suicide awareness exhibit at Garden City Community College and information concerning the college's commencement activities. If you go down to our social media information, social media came back to normal levels a little bit of our average post reach, post engagement after last month's crazy April Fool's joke went viral. Our top stories on social media were the Send Silence Packing, the mental health suicide awareness exhibit I mentioned earlier, and that reached about 8,300 people and was clicked on 576 times and had 347 likes, comments, or shares. Next highest, well, I guess that was the highest. Should have had that in a different order. I went over to Holcomb to the second graders at Wiley. They had a presentation where they had raised like over $6,000 for the Finney County Humane Society by reading books. They went out and solicited kind of some donations from area businesses for however many books they read. And then they had a little celebration there on May 10th to celebrate what they did, and it was kind of cute to see them do that. That post and photo reached about 9,200 people and was clicked on 573 times and had 481 likes, comments, and shares. And you can read the other couple of interesting posts down there at the bottom. Any questions about social media or?
It looks like it's kind of finding its base and making things work. Looks good.
Good.
Cool.
Thank you. Comment?
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Shannon, talk to us about your thing.
Your
I'm
thing.
gonna go there because it's a little broader than just,
Good, yeah. Good morning. This is a presentation that I did for the Southwest Kansas Builder Association this week. And it's an update to the chat study. So I'll go through this. I made it for about a 30-minute presentation. I'm sure nobody wants to be here for that. So I'll go through it a little bit quicker. Just what the Community Housing Assessment Team Study is. The initial study was in 2008. It was partially funded by Back Hills Energy. It's updated every 2 or 3 years, and the current version that we're on is the 2019 version. The first thing I wanted to talk about with the builders was, does this study aim high or does it aim low? So is it estimating on the high end of things or estimating on the low end of things? And we think that it's estimating on the low end of things. Some of the reasons are is because we haven't had a comprehensive study to the chat since 2012, which means that we're visiting with where they have the people come in, visit with the community, have some stakeholder meetings and so forth. So they kind of have a picture of our community from 2012, not 2019. They update the numbers and they look at the buildings since then, but they really haven't seen what's happened in the community since then. So that's one reason why we think it's a little bit low.
Shannon,
Yes.
for those who don't know and you use all these acronyms and everything, would you say just once what CHAT stands for?
It is Community Housing Assessment Team Study.
Thank you.
It doesn't include, when we're looking at the numbers for the demand, it doesn't account for any current or planned development. So if we hear of anything coming up in a month or 2 months and said, hey, we're gonna need 50 new jobs because of this. Because of our full employment rate, that means those jobs are gonna have to be coming in from outside the area. This study does not include any of that housing need. And then also we have this remnants of that undercount from 2010 in the census. So remember, when we're talking about that undercount, we're kind of getting credited for the undercount for the last 20 years. Because we have one measurement in 2010, we're almost to 2020. The undercount for Garden City was a negative 6%, is what it said. So when somebody's looking, industry or commercial is looking, it's saying, okay, well, you had an undercount 2010, but that also gets applied all the way to 2000, where we had the last positive count. So we still have that remnants that are kind of circulating around here. So when we get a new census count, that's going to go away as well. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so some of the things that we found that we see in the chat report, the Garden City population, as estimated by the city, is at 31,000. So what that's gonna, if that's what it comes out to be when they do the 2020 census, it's gonna be reporting that we have a 17% growth for the Garden City area. Again, we know that about 7% of that is at undercount, so that's just getting us back there. But it looks like we have a 1% growth for the last 10 years as well. So that's gonna cause a different amount of demand because when communities or people are looking to relocate or move into the area from Wichita or from the Front Range, they're going to see a positive growth now. And that's going to get applied from 2010. So we're going to get a credit of that 17% growth from 2010 to 2020, and then we'll be able to carry it forward through 2030. The chat study found that the growth for Finney County has increased by 43%. From 2017 to 2019. So just in those 2 years, the rate of growth that they are finding is up 43%. They say that we have the same breakdown of market and renter-occupied houses, and we also found an increase in median household income of 6% since 2017. So good numbers there. When we look at what the report has for the different types of housing, they break it down by low, moderate, and high for owner-occupied, and you can see the breakdowns of the numbers, 60 to 100,000, 100 to 200, 200 plus, and then renter-occupied, they say affordable or market, and that break-off is at $700 a month. So I have two charts here, one that's for Garden City and then one that's for Finney County overall. The difference is with Finney County, it includes the Garden City numbers and the Holcomb numbers, which the chat both says there's going to be positive growth over the next 10 years in the number of units demanded. Finney County, they say that it's going to be a wash. It could go up, it could go down. So we look at the difference between Garden City and Finney County. This is what we get. But go back for just a second.
Sorry.
And go back to the Garden City one for really quick. So a bunch of numbers here, but the thing that we have here is how many per year from 19 to 24 housing units we'll need and rental units we'll need at the different market things. The number that I wanted to push onto when we're talking about the Builders Association is this: every year for the next 10 years, we're going to be needing an estimated demand of 120 new units between housing and rental units. And so 120, if we times that by 3, is 360. So that means 1 of every 3 days for the next 10 years in Finney County. Well, it's even higher than that in Finney County, but in Garden City, we need to be bringing on 1 new unit, either apartment or housing.
Every 3 days.
Every 3 days for the next 10 years to keep up with the current demand. And this is probably estimating low. They don't know about any new projects that are going on or anything like that. So that was my big key point to the builders, was to talk about what that demand looks like. When we break it down by day by day by day, we are talking about a constant supply of needing units for the next 10 years. Okay. And so, for example, in just Garden City, right here is where we should be hitting. If we're talking about what we need to be doing every year, here's the last 10 years. Here's the average for the last 10 years. We've only done that once, and this was when we had a bunch of apartments come on. I think Pioneer Ridge came on. So everybody said this was a huge year. We had all these things coming on. Well, in actuality, this is what we should be doing every year, just to keep up with demand. And if we don't do this, now we need to build this many more the next year. So it sounded like it was well received with the builders. I think they always like to be encouraged that we do need houses and we do value their service. Here's just a breakdown of some of the housing trend needs from demand to what is proposed, if everything that is proposed right now, that's gone through the city or the county or anything like that, if they get built, what does that look like? And we see that we have some big gaps, we have some that might be met if everything is built and so forth. But, okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about is adding value, and what did we end up calling this section here? Housing density and the impact of overall value. So this is talking about what if we develop a 5-acre lot in different kinds of developments. So if we develop a 5-acre lot like Sagebrush, we can get 3.8, the average lot size is 3.8 acres. The average valuation of a lot at Sagebrush is 266. So in a 5-lot, or a 5-acre, I have to just come over here and point. I'm sorry, camera people that are watching. So if we develop a 5-acre lot like Sagebrush, we can put 1.3 acres, or 1.3 lots on that. It'll give us, for valuation for 5 acres, of $343,000. So then if we go on and build something like Labrador Ridge, which is up by Florence Wilson, and Wilson Addition, the average lot size there is 0.28 acres. So and the average lot valuation is about $200,000 for each of those. So for a 5-acre lot, we can put in 18.2 lots, which gives us a total valuation of $3.6 million. We can do better. And what's interesting is it's Indian Hills. Smaller lot size, not too much smaller, but a smaller lot size. Valuation is down a little bit per house, but we can fit in 26 lots now per 5 acres. That gives us actually a higher valuation for that 5-acre stand. So the next thing is, well, can we just make each lot smaller and smaller and smaller and then get more and more valuation? So then the next step is, well, what if we look at our mobile home parks? And they don't have lots like we have housing lots, but we can take a development and break them down by lots, because what you have with trailer parks, or the trailer homes or the mobile homes, and kind of get an idea about that. So an average, I looked at a couple of mobile home parks. Average lot is 0.16 acres. Average valuation per lot is about $9,000. Again, that doesn't include personal property taxes, which they would be paying, which is, so there's not a complete apples-to-apples thing here. But if we take that, we get $9,000. We can get higher density, 30.5 for 5 acres. But our total valuation is fairly low for that thing. But that doesn't mean that's what we have to do it. Go to the next picture. Here's the housing development that's in Boulder. You can see we have pretty nice looking things. We have playgrounds, and we have a nice development here, right? Let's go to the next one. This is Red Oak Park in Boulder, Colorado, and it's actually a redevelopment of a mobile home park for the mobile home park residents. Like, they went in, took those units, built these, and then there's actually a lot of these tenants are from that mobile home park. This is 4.1 acres, it's 59 units. That's including this green space in this common area. It's made up of 1, 2, 3, and 4 plexes, and they're both renter and owner occupied through townhomes. And the average size is about 1,000 square feet per unit. Average lot is 0.08 acres. Average valuation of each of those units is 130, so it's less than we were talking about with Indian Hills even. But for 5 acres, we can put in 72 units, which gives a total valuation of 5 acres of 9.3. So we can increase the density in a smart way and have valuation go up as well and address some of those needs. And so I brought this up for the builders to say there's a big demand for on the affordable side of housing, and there's different ways to do it. And this is just one example of a way that we can do it where everybody wins. When we build value because it's valuable for the county or the city, it's valuable for the residents because they're building wealth in their actual owning a property, and it allows us to be able to hit some of those demographics that might not be able to afford a home in a different way. Obviously, you can't just go in and build something like that, Red Oak development. It's going to take a PUD to be able to do something like that, but there are options to do that. So I think that idea was well received. I had some builders afterwards talk to me about it and said that they were excited to look at doing something like that. So hopefully we'll see some variety of housing getting built in the community as we definitely grow, because getting one unit every 3 days is going to take some creativity to get done. So any questions about that?
Well, I think it's a great piece of information. As we look at all the other things that we have going, the committed projects, if you will, they're all new, and in most cases, they're all on a new piece of property somewhere,
Right.
which involves new streets, new utilities, everything, which is phenomenal cost. Is it maybe time to go back and look at the infill lots
I definitely think so. I think
that
that is
are
a
existing?
good way to take advantage of previously installed infrastructure, and really address some of those ways where we can get some of those housing prices down with new units or redeveloped units. I think that's a really positive way to go look at that.
So if we looked at the empty lots
Mhm.
and I'm not quite sure what word to use, let's call them abandoned units
Right.
at this point in time, that might be at least a running start that would not necessitate this 8 to 10 months of utility infrastructure creation that could keep us going.
Right.
But someone has to be motivated to enter this low level, and, using your numbers, that entry level
Yeah.
is a significantly lower priced lot
Yeah.
than people have been looking at.
Right.
So maybe that's one extension of this chat study that needs to be brought forward.
Yeah, I think it would probably be a good idea for us to write a proposal, and maybe just
To
have.
do that research.
Yeah, have the member entities.
Yeah, 'cause if you could,
There's-
if you could find these lots around town that are vacant or need to be vacant, those lots, you could probably acquire most all of those for $10,000 or less. A lot similar to that in a new development area will probably cost you $30,000 or more. So that, is a big difference in the cost of the house that's gonna be, or the unit that's gonna be on that lot to start with.
Well,
So
if you guys want, I'll just create a proposal that I can send to you for.
Well, but I think if there's 10 lots, that doesn't make sense. But if there's 50, it's
Right.
really awesome.
Right, and the other good thing, and it's not, we talk about infrastructure being in place, but there's also a city in place.
Right.
And so this is one of the comments that was brought up at the Builders Development Association, where they were said, well, you can't build these, like, it's cool in Boulder that you have these walkable things and they can just walk to the store and stuff like that. And we can't go out east of the bypass and do something that's a walkable community because there's nothing to walk to yet.
Right.
But with the infill, like you're saying, there are, if we identify some of these lots, there are some places where we could build they're next to Forest Lake Park, or they're next to downtown, or they're next to these other places where that infrastructure includes the city as well. That makes it an attractive thing where we can try some of these different ideas.
And I think if we're gonna look at that, we also ought to look at the mobile home parks that are available and what do they have that's empty? Because there's going to be a need. You're showing demand based on what's here.
Right.
And this team that you work with think that they're gonna get some more people. So we've got another level of problem. So we need to make sure that we have some kind of an answer when we sit down with these people and say, here's what we're doing today
Right.
to solve that problem.
And that's why I picked that as an example of a high density, because it was taking a mobile home park and redeveloping into something that added value to everybody involved. So, yeah, I agree.
This would go back to, and, excuse me, this is way before your time and maybe a couple of the others around here, but this goes back to the old Gardendale concept, but this was a military housing project to start with, but, you had about, maybe 2 city blocks of real dense housing, but it housed, several hundred people. And I think this concept, in an updated version, in a modern version, is very much the same way.
And I think we do understand more about high density living now, with having association fees in townhome where it can be upkept better. We have better tools to upkeep those kind of things to keep the value in that and not just let it become like some sort of rundown thing with we just have a lot of people there. And there's some really good models on how to do that, good research on stuff like that. So I think we're in a really good place to look at adding density, but also doing it well for not just now, but also into the future.
Okay. Makes sense.
Good, very interesting. Any questions?
On your mobile home parks, most of the older parks are smaller, are not, the lot size is smaller because the mobile homes were smaller in the 80s. And most of them have city ordinances now that you have to put in a certain type, so you probably would have to work with the city to get it in there.
I think you're absolutely right. And, you know, there's also all kinds of covenants of whether you can, if you try to move that mobile home, it can't be moved
Yeah,
anywhere.
yeah.
But I think we need to look at the balance of where we are, where we need to be, and what can we live with that still has quality of life issues. And write those rules rather than, well, I was never gonna live in one of those, so if we're gonna have a code, it's gonna look like this. Somewhere in between, we've gotta have a balance that says this makes sense. And because there are people who are gainfully employed and want to stay gainfully employed that can't afford that
Exactly right.
$150,000 home.
Right.
And we've gotta find a place for them.
And yeah, and there's modern codes for mobile home parks too that actually develop pretty nice complexes around if you look at around the nation. So that's, I think, also part of it, because that is part of the picture for housing in our community. It is also addressing the mobile home thing. So, yeah.
Okay, well done.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Shannon. Okay, moving on, new business. In your packet, there were two items included in that. Last month, we asked Scott to put together a proposal to Convention and Tourism Bureau.
Visitors Bureau.
Convention and Visitors Bureau, excuse me.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
They like their name, and we're gonna use the right one.
Oh, I appreciate that, thank you. Where was I at?
Before you were so rudely interrupted.
Rudely.
Before I was corrected, excuse me.
I'm just supporting my partner agencies out there.
Anyway, Scott put together a proposal, and Lana and Bob and Scott and I met with Roxanne and presented this to her. And Roxanne took this to her board about a week or so later, and their board discussed a lot of that. Lana and I attended that board meeting, and there was some discussion, give and take on some things, and Convention and Tourism came back with a counter proposal to what we had requested, and that proposal also is in your packet. I think in an effort, the thought behind this to start with was, when we reached out, was that maybe we could come up with some kind of a collaborative effort between Convention and Tourism and Economic Development that, what you just,
CVB.
V.
V.
I'm gonna turn the floor over. We'll get there. Now I really forgot.
A collaborative effort between the two.
The thought behind this to start with was that we would make this some kind of a collaborative effort between both organizations and see if we couldn't come up with something. The thought was that GreaterGardenCity.com and Garden City Journal are both very successful web pages and internet site, or
Social media.
yeah,
That.
one of those media sites that are both very successful, and that it would be beneficial to Convention and Tourism as well as Economic Development, Visitors Bureau. that it would be beneficial for both. We could publicize some of the events that they fund and that they help with their promotional efforts, and that we could use Scott's talents in those areas. So this, I think, to me is still a work in progress between what we had proposed and what they have counter-proposed. So I see this as something where we're probably still a little ways apart, but need to maybe do some further work on. Roxanne, would you like to?
You give me the floor, you know I'm gonna speak.
Well, since I've muddled through what your association is called and everything else, why I certainly ought to give you a chance to correct it.
Convention and Visitors Bureau. And so what our counter proposal to you is, this is a new endeavor, this is a new partnership, and so we, the board wanted to approach this on a trial period. Make sure that that's just gonna work for you, and also that it's gonna work for us. And so when the proposal sitting in front of you is a $5,000 proposal for the next 6 months. Now, and could that be carried on to another 6-month period? Or what does that look like after that 6 months? We're not sure, but let's try this for 6 months at this level with these thoughts in place and then move forward. Since this is a new collaboration, this is a new partnership, that's how the board opted to come to you and our response to your request. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think the concept has tremendous merit for both sides. I believe we both have a lot of professionals that are in place, and that there's a lot of things that can be benefiting both sides rather than both groups trying to do the same thing at the same time. Because I think the more that we can work together and show ourselves as a community entity, it's really good. I guess in my experience in the real world, 6 months is about the time it's going to take to figure out what it is we're going to do, as opposed to have a start and a finish.
And I don't see this as a finish. I
Well-
just see this as a trial period, and I think that's the way our board was approaching it.
Okay, I guess in finishing my thought, I guess I would like to say that I think it should be a year, and I would propose a monthly arrangement to where it would be a monthly fee, because I think there's tremendous expense on both of our time and efforts of getting it started. And we have assets in place, and in essence, we're going to possibly replace a person that you would have to bring on. So I think there's a win potentially for both sides. So I guess in my thoughts to our board, I would propose a 1-year contract at a $1,500 a month fee. And I think that allows us to afford to change over our methodology to include all of these other things, and be able to find a way that works. We're significantly coming off of what our request was, and yet I think we're offering a service that could be viable for both sides, and I think that's what makes it work. So I think the idea and the concept of the two associations working with one another is a phenomenal step. And so rather than say no to anything, we think it's worth asking for consideration on those two topics.
I somewhat agree. I think, and like I mentioned, I see this right now as still a work in progress and kind of a give and take negotiative type situation where we're at right now. And I agree with Bob. I think we've got some real talent and some real exposure that could be shared and benefited, by Convention and Visitors Bureau,
Thank you, Tom.
as well as economic development. And I think we need to work on that. Maybe we need to still sit down and Scott and Lana work on maybe a counter proposal that we can go back to CVB with and see if we can't come up with something. What are some of the opinions from the rest of you, or anything, thoughts, or?
I agree with Bob. I think the 6-month time frame is a little too short, because I'd hate to try to rush to get something out in 6 months, and then if they had to rush and it didn't pan out like we thought, then at the 6-month evaluation, they're saying, well, you know what, that just didn't work out. I think just because maybe it was rushed. And, 'cause yeah, it'll take probably a few months just to get things, okay, this is what we want to do, and then you have a month or two to try to put something out and then try to evaluate that
Well,
on
our
after a month or
request-
two.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, that's fine.
Our request was to do these events before they happen.
We
Um,
always do the events before they happen. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's meant to
it would
promote
be-
the event in advance. Some of the events, he does a post cap too, if they're large enough events and that type of stuff. But they're always done in advance. The idea is to promote folks to come to the event. So it's to get the word out to that surrounding area, so
Correct.
they come in for
Well, I
it.
think these are the kind of things we're talking about, of working out. You have expectations, we have expectations, and we have to work through what it is that you want done. And I think that's why we'd like to see it try to happen.
Oh, yes, we would like to, our entity and myself has always preached collaboration and partnership, and so definitely, we want to be the best partner we can possibly be. And also, but then again, we have to take into consideration the needs of our entity, what our mission is and what we have to fulfill. So yeah, we would be open to absolutely having a counter proposal brought back to us and look at that.
Okay.
So,
And I think we can have that readily put together, Tom, this week
Right.
with your oversight, as long as the rest of the board is okay and trust Tom to make a good decision and submit a good
Yeah.
counter proposal, we can get that
Yeah.
done.
We can work on that.
I think you've got their support,
Yeah,
Tom.
I think, we can work on a counter proposal and hopefully get back to you. You have a special board meeting coming up to discuss some other things.
yesterday, I
Is
sent
that-
out the notice and we had it yesterday and
Oh,
we
was it
voted
yesterday?
on
Okay.
this to make sure that this was what the board coming in front of you, this is what the board felt good about. And then also we had another item that we voted on.
Right.
So.
Okay,
yes.
well, we can work on this then. Your next board meeting will be about the third week or
It's
so
the
of
third
June.
Wednesday of the month, yes.
So we
So
can,
it's
we can work
17th.
on this and get back with you on a kind of a counter proposal or something and see what we can come up with, and then talk to your board next month and just see where we go and see what we can work out, so,
Sounds wonderful.
okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very
you.
much.
Thanks for
I
being here.
appreciate you taking time to get up early this morning and
It's not early for
come
us.
down and sit with us. It's early for some of us. Okay. We have no old business as such. I think that covers the agenda. Do we need an executive session for, we need an executive session for
Yes, for client confidentiality,
15 minutes adequate?
yes.
15 minutes, okay. It's 8:43 right now. I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting and re-adjourn in executive session at 8:45.
And I would, excuse me, I'll offer a point of clarification, there is no discussion of non-elected personnel scheduled. That was a
This would
remainder
be
on the
client
agenda. Our
confidentiality.
apologies.
Right.
All right, so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye. Okay, we will adjourn. We will reconvene in a couple of minutes.
A couple minutes.
Well, it's a minute now. You keep muddling around.
How long is your executive session?
Pardon?
How long is the executive session?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. That's the only thing.
Figured you would pay attention.